Hello, I'm Anthony Mills, Executive Director of Global Innovation Institute, GINI. GINI is the world's leading certification, accreditation, and membership organization in the world of business innovation. Today, we're here to talk about a book that has recently been published by GINI called The Other Side of Growth, An Innovator's Responsibilities in an Emerging World. This book brings together 9 different authors from around the world to talk about how we leverage innovation to drive growth in businesses and challenges business leaders to think about how we're delivering those innovations in a way that will positively impact the world and the values we're using in the process, and asking ourselves questions about the long-term implications of the innovations we develop and release and how those impact the world. So it's a very powerful book. And with me today, I have one of the contributors to the book, Mr. Bryan Mattimore. Bryan is the co-founder and one of the principals of the Growth Engine Company. Growth Engine is one of the leading innovation agencies in the United States. And Bryan has contributed a chapter to this book on the topic of corporate values and how values play a role in the organization. So with that, I want to welcome you, Bryan.
Hey, Anthony, good to be here.
Great, it's a pleasure to have you. What we're going to do today is, Bryan, I'm going to ask you a series of questions about your contribution to this book, The Other Side of Growth, and have you elaborate for us on some of the points you've made in your chapter. All right?
Yeah.
So
And by the way, I would just say, Anthony, that the fact that you got 9 different contributors for this book is in itself an accomplishment, because we all know how busy we are, but also, I mean, it's reflective of the world today and the need for different thought leaders to come together and different partnerships. And so I think the book is a good example of the importance of, practicing what you preach.
Absolutely. Thank you, Bryan. And I absolutely agree. I mean, this situation we're in right now is, the world seems to be awakening to the realization that businesses need to be more accountable. And with social media and other tools, we have the ability to hold businesses more accountable, and there needs to be more transparency. And this seems to be an ongoing trend that even business leaders are waking up today.
Yep.
So with that, in this book, The Other Side of Growth, you discussed how that organizational values are an essential tool for being able to create a proper culture of innovation in the organization. So talk to us about the sorts of values you have in mind here and why those types of values play such a crucial role in this context.
Well, of course, culture is tough, right? I mean, to quote, change a culture, you're moving the battleship, right? And that's not easy. And if you're a new CEO or even a current CEO, you know how difficult that can be, So we've done work with our clients as an innovation agency, obviously on new products and services and those kind of standard things, but we've also done mission, vision, and values work. And from that work, we've discovered that values are this sort of unexploited or secret key, if you will, for unlocking growth, for unlocking the potential of the organization. And so in that sense, values, if we look at the word values itself, values, what do you value, right? Sometimes the word itself will tell you, will lead you, when you take it literally, to interesting ideas. So one is that values, represent what we value. But the other thing, possibly even more important for a business audience, is that values unlock value. And so you've got this very soft, presumed soft thing. Oh, values. Okay, well, that's the plaque on the wall. But no, we have discovered through our work with our clients that values are a huge vehicle and a critical vehicle for unlocking the potential of the employees and ultimately the potential value and worth of an organization.
Very good, very good. And I think a lot of us are seeing that same thing, particularly too with newer generations are coming in. They're looking for more mission-oriented businesses and purpose-oriented businesses, and values are really at the heart of that. Is what is our purpose and mission, and what are the values that underpin that? So absolutely, I think that is a fundamental core element of any modern business enterprise going forward.
Yeah, and of course you alluded to the using quote using values. It's a weird way to put it, but to that values are critical in all elements of the business. The one you just alluded to was, in a sense, recruiting and retention, right?
Yeah.
Having millennials come to work for your organization. Before COVID, we were working with our clients, believe it or not, doing ideation sessions on how to attract millennials to their organization, because the talent wars were raging, right? Mm-hmm. And so values affect that, certainly, but they affect every other aspect that we may talk about here today. And certainly at the bottom line, they affect the ROI, which I think we'll get into here.
Yeah. So in your experience then, how does pursuing new innovation under this umbrella of values produce the types of outcomes that benefit a broad range of stakeholders rather than simply the business shareholders?
Well, one of the premises of this, the argument I make in the book and I feel strongly about, is that to unlock the value of an organization, you have to have motivated and frankly, I like to think happy employees, right? Because everybody thinks, well, you've got the shareholders, et cetera, but profit is a result of doing all the other things right, and so that should not be the starting point. It should be, we have a bunch of quote values and missions and purpose and statements about innovation, and one of them is begin and end with the customer, right? That kind of makes sense, but in a sense, that's not even quite true. You almost want to begin with the employees, because it's like being married. If she's not happy, we're not happy. And so right. you want to make sure the employees, you've created structures in an environment, and this is all about culture change, right? Where employees can self-actualize to their fullest, and if they are, then all these other things, ROI and value will occur. Part of this, as we know, Tony Hsieh passed away recently. It's such a shame for the world, in my opinion, because he was a true pioneer at Zappos of the importance of values. And underlying and underpinning some of his work was his study of happiness, right? And so, there are kind of four elements to happiness. Just, I'll abbreviate it. One, people want to feel in control, right? Because that, if you're not in control, you're freaking out, right? Another is you want to make meaningful connections with other people. Another is you really want to have an environment where you're self-actualizing. And finally, if you will, the fourth one, and in some ways the most important, which was sort of written about by Viktor Frankl in Man's Search for Meaning, is you want a sense of purpose, right? Mm-hmm. And so all of those, frankly, underlie values, right? And so you're starting with the individual. These values you want to champion, and we'll talk about that, I'm sure. And that leads to, quote, happy and self-actualizing and mission-driven employees. And kind of what's better than that?
Well, that's a great point, and it actually brings the thought, something to my mind. I like to compare and contrast a little bit Jeff Bezos at Amazon to Richard Branson at Virgin. And, Bezos really emphasizes customer. Branson emphasizes employee. And I think they're both right. I think, really elevating, and it used to be shareholder, right? And of the three, customer, employee, and shareholder, it used to be that shareholder sat at the top of the pyramid. And I think that's been inverted now. And I think both Bezos and Branson are right. Customer and employee are both sitting on top of shareholder. And if you get the employee right, you'll get the customer right. If you get the customer right, you'll get the shareholder right.
Yeah, and of course, mentioning Jeff Bezos, right? I mean, and if I go back to the Zappos example, I reference this in the chapter. He took over. Tony Hsieh took over a basically failing organization, so he spent over a year, quote, getting the values right at Zappos. Mm-hmm. And after he had done that, he went from bankruptcy and something that in Jeff Bezos's eyes was worth $1.2 billion, yeah. Right? So value. I mean, these are hard-nosed numbers, right? Mm-hmm. So talking about values unlocking of value, I think Tony Hsieh, I know he would say, yeah, it all started with the values, right? So this is not the softer side of Sears. This is the harder side of ROI for Amazon, right?
Absolutely, and it does come down to ROI. And in Zappos values, they had 10 values, and again, those 10 values were largely defined by the late Tony Hsieh. And in that, 3 of those values really focus on the importance of creativity. And you're a creativity guy, so talk to us about those specific types of values. Ones that emphasize creative thinking and innovation and growth. How do those help organizations really take the right path?
Yeah, well, thank you for calling me a creativity guy. For me, in my world, there's sort of no higher honor. So thank you for that. Yeah, I mean, I think if you look at the values of any organization, certainly any organization that plans to be around in the next 2, 3, 5, 10 years, you will find that there's some element of innovation and or creativity in their values, right? Mm-hmm. So, Zappos has 10 sort of famous values. In my opinion, that's probably a few too many, but whether it's 5 or 6 or 8 or 10, whatever it is. But 3 of them, and 3 of them to me are all about sort of implied or inherent or nascent creativity and innovation. Their value, the first one is deliver wow through service, but the 3 that I focused on in this chapter were, embrace and drive change. Okay, you can't, how are you going to change if you don't change? And that means new ideas, right? What else do we have here? Number 3 is be adventurous, creative, and open-minded. Well, that's, oh my gosh, that's about as specific as you can get, right? And then number 10, which is really cool, is create fun and a little weirdness. Okay, so weirdness is, it's hard to be weird without being creative, in my opinion. The point here is that being creative, even more so in these times, and being innovative, and I think you would agree, I know you would agree, is you can't survive without it. Yeah. And so your values need to reflect that business reality, frankly.
And I think that's a valid point. I think a lesson to be taken away there from most business organizations is take a look at our values, and in what ways are our values directly addressing creativity and innovation and change and driving that sort of creative, and I like to think of imaginative thinking. How can we imagine of a better future? Are those in our values, and can we get those into our values, and how do we do so?
Yeah, I mean, I love that imaginative thinking. And it goes beyond, way beyond, in some sense, wishful thinking. It's imaginative thinking, because there are, obviously, you're not just coming up with ideas. You spent your life, and I've spent my life helping people turn those ideas into business value and customer value. So and
it takes being able to use your imagination to envision a better future, an ideal future scenario, so that as a business we can work for that, and that's how we're going to deliver value, tomorrow and the day after tomorrow to our customers of tomorrow, is through that innovation and the creativity and so forth.
Yeah, and I think the listener might be saying, okay, great, I get it, I'm with you, but how do you do this, right? I mean, because most organizations have, the plaque on the wall, and it's probably got the vision, and maybe it's got the mission. So, and hopefully the values are there as well. Yeah. But you grab people before they get on the elevator at corporate headquarters and say, what are the values of the organization? And a lot of them, I would presume, in many organizations, start humming and hawing and say, yeah, well, we want to be, customer oriented, and there's one about, being creative, and I think there are like 5 or 6 of them. I mean, that's kind of what you get, right?
Exactly.
And so, really, if you are going to unlock the potential, the creative potential of your employees, and therefore ultimately of your organization, you need to figure out ways to have these values become part of people's everyday experience. They need to change behavior. They need to affect behavior. In fact, they need to tell people not only what to do, but not only what not to do. And leadership, it's important that leadership then promote these on an ongoing basis. It has to be ongoing, right? so that people internalize these and even if they don't know the words, they know the values, if you know what I mean. I mean, the Bible has 10 commandments. I couldn't tell you, but I couldn't tell you what they are, but we kind of, those who follow that faith internalize those values, right? And we all know, throughout history and all the sacred texts, there's certain, primordial, prototypical human values. And so we need to champion those amongst our employees, because it will affect behavior.
It will.
And that's the goal.
Yeah, and I think you hit the nail on the head too when you talked about leadership, not only just promoting those values, but truly living out those values themselves. I think a lot of corporate culture starts with leaders, truly living out those values themselves and modeling that behavior for the rest of the organization.
Yeah, it's a great point. I mean, I didn't misspeak, but I only went a third of the way there. Promotion, so what? It's all about, do people internalize these and do they live them, right? And so that's where the rubber meets the road, and that's what's really important. And so if you want, we could talk about a couple of the how-tos. I know
you had a couple techniques you mentioned in your chapter about how the organization could reinforce the corporate values, and a couple of those that you mentioned were newsletters and then a whiteboard technique. So why don't you explain those to us and tell us how those techniques are used to reinforce the values?
Yeah, so the newsletter, and this obviously could be virtual, and it doesn't have to be, quote, a formal newsletter, but these are, if you will, monthly, but they could even be daily communications with your employees, mentioning those values. Okay, here they are. In the chapter, I talk about one of our clients, a real estate firm in New York, and they would publish this newsletter, and they, one of them is be a pioneer. Okay, great. What does that mean? I'm welcoming people to the building. What does that mean, be a pioneer? Well, part of the responsibility then is to say, okay, how do you translate that value into your daily job and to your behavior? And so we ran ideation sessions with their employees on exactly that. How do we be creative about translating being a pioneer to welcoming the people to our building, right? And so the idea is you have to activate these in a way that will affect behavior, and you want the people to be creative about how that's activated, right?
Yeah.
So that's certainly one thing. The other thing is you can share examples in the world of pioneers to inspire people. Certainly there are plenty of examples throughout history, of course, and also there are wonderful, TED Talks about that.
Oh, yeah.
And then the final, most important thing, frankly, of all those is that you want to share stories of people having been and reflected and manifested and acted on those values in their job. So the guy who welcomed people, he had the idea to, have dry umbrellas when it was raining, so he's pioneering new approaches to customer service or whatever it is. And it's those stories, frankly, of all that I'm going to say today. It's popularizing those internal stories that champion and reflect these values that is absolutely critical.
Okay. Does that fall into the whiteboard technique as well?
Well, in the whiteboard, so that's a whole different thing, because number one, you want people to know what the values are, and you want them to practice the values, right? And you can do that, through the newsletter and other communication vehicles, an app, audios, whatever. The whiteboard is a little different in that this gets back to your and my world, this world of creativity, specifically in innovation. So how do you create an environment where people are encouraged and feel comfortable sharing ideas on a daily basis? And this is not just the new product, right? This is how do we manufacture things cheaper, better, faster? This is, coming up with the umbrella, any form of customer experience that you can improve. It doesn't matter what division you're in. Everybody coming up with ideas to improve the organization and creating an environment where that risk taking is promoted. So one of the ideas we came up with, and of course, when I say creativity, the first thought that people often go to is the idea of a suggestion box, right? And of course, those have been, with a few exceptions, some of our clients being them Frito-Lay and Dart Industries, et cetera, those have been tremendous. There's probably the biggest failure in American business that's ever been, suggestion boxes, right? And when we were asked to look at that, there are two reasons. One, there isn't sufficient follow-up typically. That's one. And typically you don't get the building that's required to make a beginning idea really great. It's the child doesn't have a chance to, or the baby doesn't have a chance to grow. You put it in this black box, and people can say, yeah, well, that's not a very good idea. Well, maybe that's the start of something really interesting, right? So we looked at that, and because one of our clients had said, can you help us have our employees create more and better ideas? But we're a manufacturing organization. We don't want to take people off the line. I'm like, okay. So we came up with this very simple idea, which is the whiteboard technique, where you get a manager, he comes up with a challenge. How do we improve customer experience? How do we cut costs? How do we invent new products? It doesn't matter, right? Puts it out in a public place, and then encourages people over usually a 7-day, 10-day period to just write ideas down on the whiteboard. And it's wonderful because you get all kinds of building, right? People see this. You can put questions on there. You can put articles on, tape articles to it. You can put how abouts, what ifs, questions, and you get this chaotic mess up there, which is fantastic. And you get what you find is that you get all kinds of really cool things that occur. And by the way, just for the listeners, if there are swear words and, go to hell, John, and all that, there is a bigger issue here than corporate creativity. There's a culture challenge that has to be addressed. Yeah. But anyway, so you have to put a deadline on it, 7 to 10 days or whatever that means. And at the end of those 7 or 10 days, you say, okay, we're done. Now we're going to do a different challenge. But the key is you have to do something. Mm-hmm. Otherwise, people will become, disenfranchised or, feel that the process is not valid. And so you could take those and use those for the basis of ideation. You could actually go do them. One of our clients, they actually invented, he had a challenge to invent a new package, and he had a little reward, $25, and he put it in the lunchroom. And after the 10-day period, and by the way, people were buying little packets or little packages that they got at Home Depot and said, it could look like this. And he got 2 ideas that were breakthrough ideas, and he actually went and did one of them. So what did that cost him? It cost him the $25 lunch, So the point here is that there is tremendous nascent creativity that needs to be tapped, right? Mm-hmm. And I tell the story in the book about working with Con Ed and interviewing employees, and it was a seminal eureka moment for me that I discovered that when I asked people what they're most proud of, and these are people that had been their employees for 20 years or more, without exception, they said it was, oh, I created this thing and it did this thing and it had this effect. So it was at that moment that I realized how critically important creating environments where people can be creative for their organization, not only for the growth of the organization, but for the growth and happiness, retention, and self-actualization of the employees.
Absolutely. Brian, I worked for a while at Whirlpool Corporation. Whirlpool used the whiteboard technique too. There's a wall outside of a conference room, and they just painted the wall with whiteboard paint. And then every now and then someone would put a specific challenge there. And people, as they're just passing by, would see the challenge, and they would come up with creative ideas, and they'd leave their notes there. And the fun thing too is you would get doodling and art and stuff like that with it too. And that just really reinforced the whole environment of creativity in the whole area. So I really enjoyed watching, not only the answers people had, but some of the doodling they did as well, in the drawings.
Well, it's that's a fantastic example. And I know Whirlpool has a great reputation for innovation and creativity. So in some ways, I'm not surprised. But, the other thing it does, which is so extraordinary, is that it gives you soak time. It gives you time, and you're walking by that thing. We call it the crossword puzzle effect, right? You can't get the damn thing on Sunday, and then Monday morning, and you walk in and say, "Oh my gosh, of course it's this." And so what happens is you walk by that every day. Your brain, without even trying, is looking for and frankly finding connections and identifying patterns. Yeah. And so on day 7 of the 10 days, you walk by there, you got a coffee in your hand, you're about to go to a meeting, and you look at the thing and say, oh my gosh, if I connected this thing with that thing, I got a whole new thing. Oh my God, I got a brilliant idea.
Yeah.
And it just pops out of nowhere. Well, the wonderful thing is you've been, without knowing, working on that over the 7 days, and the miraculous connection, pattern making thing we call the brain has made those connections. So that's the other reason why that public whiteboard is so
absolutely. And sometimes we call that process the incubation process. It incubates in your mind, and it's like synapses are growing, and they eventually connect in your brain, and they make these, the connections, and you get that aha moment. The light bulb goes on, and there's the idea. So these are all excellent tools. So going back to this, certainly, I mean, things like the whiteboard technique and our newsletters absolutely do reinforce these values of creativity and growth and change and innovation in the organization. It makes for just an overall positive workplace. So with that, really, we'll start to wrap it up. Do you have any final takeaways you'd like to share with our listeners as we think about the other side of growth? Any final thoughts?
Oh gosh, that's a great question. We don't have 4 hours, so maybe I can think of something in 30 seconds here. I guess I would just reinforce the idea that that values create value. I mean, they unlock value, and that's the message I want people to take. And because I mean, God, life is too short not to. I mean, if you asked, if you took a survey of employees in America around the world and asked how many love their job, are ecstatic to go to work, are unbelievably happy there, is it 20%, 30%? It's certainly not 70 or 80 or 90%, and it should be those kind of high numbers. And to me, it's incumbent on leadership to create those environments where you would get that kind of reaction, where people just can't wait to get to work because they have a sense of mission and purpose and self-actualization. And so if you're a leader and you're looking for a vehicle to begin that transformation in your organization, I would say, you've got your mission and vision, but now focus on your values.
Excellent. Very good. Well, thank you so much, Bryan. And for all our listeners out there, I would encourage you to pick up a copy of the book. It's The Other Side of Growth, An Innovator's Responsibilities in an Emerging World. You can find it on Amazon, or you can find it on the GINI website at GINI.org under the Innovation Library. Thank you very much for your time. Thank you again, Bryan. It was a pleasure having you today.
Thank you, Anthony. A lot of fun.
All right. Take care.